happening? Hello everyone, my name is Del, or Delazar, and really I'm just trying to do whatever the fuck I want, and we're going to be watching a video today from Overly Sarcastic Productions. You probably should have known this due to the fact of either one, you saw the thumbnail, or two, you saw the title. You know, two things that should be really obvious for you clicking on this video. But, thank you very much for doing both of those, if not either of those things. Now, this is actually technically a suggestion from, Justin Alicia. Yeah, I believe this is the right video. I don't remember it too well, but I think it is. Let's begin.
The Roman Republic. Part 1. I used to think that the old adage of Rome wasn't built in a day was painfully obvious and also distinctly uninsightful. Because honestly, at face value, it kind of is. That phrase is winking at you so hard it's practically wearing an eye patch.
What?
But if instead of just Rome the city, we think about Rome the culture, Rome the institution, Rome the sea-conquering empire, that phrase starts to actually say something. Rome, as I hope this video series will show, was really special. There's honestly nothing like it. And I think it's important to appreciate not just what...
Remember, I know a lot more from Red, because I generally get into the mythological bullshit, because history just bothers the fuck out of me. Well, not bothers, it actually just is like, let's see what happens. But I know Blue from the times when there's like diatribes, so I'm down for this. I just don't know where the fuck we're going with it. Anyways, let's begin. Or not begin, but get back into it.
But how much slow, careful, calculated effort was put into its creation. And as you'll see in a minute, early Roman history is a notoriously slow burn. Generation after generation dedicated themselves to something they'd never see the end of. And I just think that's really cool. So, let's do some history. If we jump into our handy-dandy time machines and go all the way back to the beginning of Roman history, we'll be looking at an actively on-fire city.
What the fuck is this?
To be Troy. Yep. The plot twist...
Early Roman history is absurdly murky. Records from the pre-Republican era were lost during a Gallic sack in 390 BC. So later, Romans retold legends in lieu of full historical truth. Archaeology helps courageous historians parse out the history, but will likely never know the true origins of Rome. So the legends will have to do. Essentially, treat everything pre-500 as a fable. God, I pulled out the Wikipedia voice.
Is that the Romans are actually descendants of the Trojans. According to Roman tradition, one specific Trojan, named Aeneas, who fled the burning city on the orders of his mother Venus to sail around the Mediterranean in search of Italy. This story comes to us most clearly in Virgil's epic poem The Aeneid. After a run-in with Queen Dido of Carthage and a journey through scenic hell, Aeneas and crew arrived on the plain of Latium in central Italy. To make matters more Italian, the very first thing they do when they arrive is eat pizza.
Is this a... Are they fucking joking? Is this a joke? Also, let's check the description. That's not what I meant to happen.
The Rise and Fall of the Roman
Bitch,
Republic.
no.
Part 1.
Go back. So, where's Pizza Man? Yeah, there we go.
Crew arrived on the plain of Latium in
I'm gonna click here so I can
to make matters
see
more Italian, the very first thing they do when they arrive is eat pizza. Wow. We're not even 2 minutes in and we're already establishing over 3,000 years of stereotypes. I can't even be mad, that's just really efficient. Fast forward a few hundred years after Aeneas to 753 BC and the brothers Romulus and Remus, who were raised by a wolf, got into a kerfuffle of sorts while building some walls around their village, and Romulus and...
I'm now realizing this. Okay, so y'all ever just like casually just pay attention to something and you're like, oh, so that's why this is named that. There's a fucking manhwa that I was reading on Webtoon called Hybrid. I very much support it, and I believe anyone should check it out because it's good. But I'm now realizing why the fuck that wolf is named Romulus. Because I was always just like, why does he have such a big regal ass name? But if this is actually related to it, that makes so much more sense now.
Ended up murdering Remus in what became the most etymologically significant fratricide in world history. That, kids, is why it's called Rome and not Reem. Anyway, Romulus claimed kingship over his newly walled village, and over the next 2.5 centuries, 7 kings oversaw Rome's transformation.
H. Y. Byrd. Hopefully, I know how to spell. I genuinely just forgot it. I swear I could have told you how to spell it beforehand. I'll tell you again. Yes, local. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Transformation from backwater town to moderately cool city. And even that wasn't a guarantee. Most of the action in world history up to this point happened in
Yay.
Mesopotamia and the Eastern Mediterranean. Rome is all the way on the west coast of Italy.
Neither can
I
I,
don't think
Jacopo.
I can overstate how completely irrelevant Rome was in the broader Mediterranean arena for the first 500 years of its history.
Hmm.
Rome, as we know, ended up conquering most of the known classical world, but a majority of its early history was simply a spirited back and forth between its neighbors. The Etruscans to the north, the
Mm-hmm.
Samnites to the south, and later on, the Greek colonies of Magna Graecia to the way further south. And by spirited, I do literally mean they were stabbing each other with spears. While all of
Yeah.
this neighborly murdery business was going on, the city of Rome was building itself up both physically
I'm just saying this now. Spears are like unironically super fucking good. Like they're just good. They're good weapons. They're very useful, very handy. You can give anyone something and just go poke it with the stabby stick.
and institutionally, with walls, streets, a sewer system, stone temples and buildings, a governmental system reminiscent of the Greek polis system, and a religious system reminiscent of the Greek pantheon. Man, that Greek
Mm-hmm.
influence really got in there early. All of this was going on all nice and well until in 509 BC, the Romans thought that their king, Tarquin the Proud, aka Tarquinius Superbus, aka Tarky Superbus, was
Cerebus.
a
What?
total knob. And they were getting kinda tired of being ruled, so they kicked him out, swore never to have another king again, and
Became a
officially
republic.
created the Roman Republic.
Yeah.
Institutionally speaking, a lot of the
I remember
mechanics of the
watching the
Republic were
movie.
already in
Wait, what was the fucking name of the movie? Damn it. I think was it Gladiator? I remember watching that one movie in high school. Where he ended up saying the words, "Are you not detained?" Yeah, that was a great high school movie. Spears are near and definitely the best weapon in all of history. Yeah, like spears are just super useful. Like swords can be done with a lot of cool shit. Axes are good for just getting through things, for being a tool and also being a weapon in times of need. Halberds are very fucking good. Just pole arms in general because they give you extra reach. Um, Fencing equipment, which is more swords, but still, it's a little bit different than how you use a lot of other type of fucking slashy type things. What else is there? Shields are also just good, but shields kind of stop being relevant when people start getting firearms, and so does armor because well, you just get shot.
place, like the Senate, the patrician nobility, and the citizen assembly, for instance. The transition to a republic was really more of a reorganization of authority than a political revolution or anything like that. Broadly speaking, the whole idea was to take their government and publicize the power so the people could participate, and the word republic comes from the Latin res
True. Also, local. Think about the fucking building requirements. What do you need to make a spear? Not a lot. You don't need much to make a spear.
publica, which just means public thing. Structurally, the government was controlled by two annually elected consuls. The praetors ran the justice system, and the quaestors, the silliest Roman name ever, managed state finances. The aediles were responsible for the state of the city, so they handled food, games, infrastructure, and all that jazz. The Senate, though it didn't directly legislate anything, published opinions on policy that were often very quickly put in place by the respective officers down the
Hmm.
chain. Almost all of these magistrates and senators in the early republic were of the patrician nobility. If you happened to be one of Rome's many plebeians, you might have rightly felt a little left out of this supposed res publica.
I'm just gonna say this right now. It's not that there was power given to the people. It was just that the power was spread amongst the highest of the classes instead of all concentrated amongst the top of the class. If I'm understanding this correctly, maybe.
The plebeians, unsurprisingly, wanted political and social rights, and they were determined to acquire them. So on any given season of campaigning against Rome's bothersome neighbors, the plebeians, who composed the majority of the army, simply went on strike. They'd just go sit on a hill and wait until the Senate granted them the right to marry patricians, or to have their own government positions in special assembly, or to
That's
elect
so
their own
fucking
members
good.
of that special assembly.
Hey, I feel like a lot of governments and armies should do this. It's just like I don't want to fight this thing until I get these rights. You know what? We go on strike. Like I'm just saying, this isn't treason, but what if we decided to just go on strike from certain wars? Totally nothing. Totally not. You know what the fuck I'm talking about. Look at the news. Look at the state of the world. You know what the fuck I'm talking about.
assembly, or to serve as consul, and then by 287 BC, the plebeians and the patricians were equal in everything but name. Good for them. Institutionally, the Roman Republic simultaneously had elements of a monarchy, an aristocracy, and a democracy.
Hmm.
This mixed constitution and its flexibility in governance, according to the historian Polybius, was one of Rome's greatest strengths, and I'm inclined to agree. Rome's institutions were its backbone for over 1,000
Mm-hmm.
years, and that's darn impressive. Okay, enough of the politicky stuff. Back to the
Yay.
stabby stuff. Now, like I
Yeah,
said,
more
early
stabby.
Roman Republican history is a notoriously slow burn. The struggle for plebeians'
It's a
rights took
nice
over
little
two
roast, you know?
centuries, and conquering the Italian peninsula was similarly slow going. Rome was intent on being careful, taking small steps, and taking its
Mm-hmm.
time. Recall how, in the aftermath of both the Macedonian and Mongol conquests, when you go
Mm-hmm.
too far, too fast, things tend to fracture. Rome
Oh,
spent
yeah.
most of the 4th and early 3rd centuries fighting with various neighbors and working its way down to only the Bay of Naples. That's a pretty short way to go in so long a time. They were
Mm-hmm.
being really careful. Key to Rome's military strategy was the doctrine of expanding defense. Essentially,
What?
Rome would never be so brash as to go out and attack someone. Good heavens, no. Rome had the good manners to only fight in self-defense, and they knew that their gods would only grant them victory if their war was a just and pious war. But if
Hmm.
Rome suspected that someone was going to attack them, Rome would absolutely shoot first.
Oh, this is a fucking sneaky little thing. This is some little bro, big bro type shit. It's like, come on now. Throw the first punch. The second you pull back your fist, you've already got socked in the fucking jaw. This is exactly what that is. It's just like, come on now, throw your first punch. And I'm, oh shit, you punched me in my fucking throat. Like, you know damn well what the fuck you doing. You know what Rome's up to. We didn't start it, but we sure as hell ended it real quick.
Defensively, of course. A preemptive retaliatory strike, if you will. And
Mm-hmm.
that is how you go on to conquer the entire world defensively. By 280, Rome had successfully yoinked all of Samnium and proceeded to set its sights on Magna Graecia in southern Italy. Magna
Yep.
Graecia, not being the biggest fans of the Romans and wishing to keep their land thank you very much, sent for help from Greece proper, and they brought in the
No.
big guns. Specifically, they imported the
Mm.
Hellenistic king Pyrrhus of Epirus. Pyrrhus fought 2 battles against the Romans, and even though he won both of them, his losses were so devastating that he bailed on the campaign. After a detour through Sicily, he fought the Romans again, lost, and went home for good. Pyrrhus's abilities to win
Bro said, yeah. Shit, y'all tired? And they're just like, dude, get the fuck out of here. I'll be back. Like 4 months comes by. Dude, hey, yeah, what? Did I win? You didn't do jack shit. Fuck this, I'm going home. Fuck this, I'm going home. Round 2, I lost.
battles coupled with his inability to not burn through a third of his army in the process is what gives us the term Pyrrhic victory. So, good on Pyrrhus for eternally tethering his name to the military equivalent of pulling 5 consecutive all-nighters to cram for a test. Yeah, it's a win, but was it worth it? So, with
Yeah.
pretty much no one left to protect Magna Graecia, Rome proceeded to swoop in and colonize all over the place. And
Oh
unlike those who
no.
employ the torch it and start over method of conquest, the Romans had a good track record of being kind to conquered peoples. Except for this next example, from a rather
Oh.
salty chapter in Roman history, the Punic Wars against Carthage. Part 2. The first war can be
Mm-hmm.
roughly attributed to a miscommunication with some Sicilian pirates. While Carthage and Rome may have been destined to fight
You're finally a powerful state. Allow us to introduce ourselves. Huh. That's actually really neat, you know? It's like, oh, you finally raised to our level. We'll be nice to you for a moment. Now, just listen to us and do as we command, as we obviously outrank and overpower you. No? Oh, well then. Get fucked.
each other at some point or another, they
I'm,
ultimately came
find,
to
I'm finding it really weird how this blue area is still alive. Ain't y'all supposed to have already taken this away? Or are you trying to leave like some boundary room in between you?
blows on account of both being called into Sicily to settle a fight between the city of Syracuse and some rowdy pirates. Rome and
Oh.
Carthage kind of just tripped face first into war and spent most of the 23-year-long war not actually fighting each other.
Hmm?
The issue was Carthage had been a long-standing naval power in the Mediterranean, but Rome had no navy to speak of. So Rome really needed a navy, and quick. This is another of many instances of Rome adapting to situations really well. Say what you will about Rome, they were
Do they have Greek fire at this point in history? I forget. For those who don't know, Greek fire is that magical substance that people are thinking we got it, but we're also not sure if we have it. Basically, it's shit that you can throw and it burns even when it's on top of water.
immensely clever and had a great habit of taking good ideas, methods, technologies, and techniques from other cultures and using them to great effect. In this case, the Romans
So Rome is just Maharaja.
found a few beached and sunk Carthaginian triremes and quinquiremes
Like
and
oil
proceeded
fires?
to reverse
It was something similar to that. We might have to actually look for a video describing what Greek fire was, so that I can actually be clarified. Because I just remember the shit that burned really well, did good, was a really good fuel, but also could burn on water and it would not be put out by water. So they would throw it on someone's ship and it's just you're gone, you're fucked, give up.
engineer an entire fleet of ships. You know, just casually,
Mm-hmm.
as you do. Rome's first aquatic outings weren't all that fruitful, but at battles like Cape Ecnomus, which is arguably one of the biggest naval battles in history, Rome pulled out wins. Ultimately, Rome
Yeah.
won the war, claiming Sicily for itself and forcing heavy reparations on Carthage. They also decided to take Corsica and Sardinia because, screw you, Carthage, these are mine now. In the decades
Hey, I'm just saying, like, we won the war. Give us our shit. Run your motherfucking pockets, bitch. Who said you gonna take something back? You ain't gonna keep no land if you won. If you lost the fight, that makes sense to me. The fuck. And from what we can tell, or at least what's been said, Rome doesn't usually just murder everyone there. So at the very least, hopefully the people can live. You know, it's like you're our people now, but we don't want to shut the fuck up. You're our people now. We take care of our own people, but if you don't want to be our people, we'll show you what happens to those who ain't our people. That's just how I assume because history is brutal. It's a you'll be ours or you'll die.
following, the Carthaginians, led by the general Hamilcar Barca, colonized the seaside coast of Spain, largely for the
Ooh.
purposes of mining silver to pay their Roman reparations. Little did Rome know, Hamilcar, his son Hannibal, and the other Carthaginians in Spain were furious over losing Sicily, Corsica, and Sardinia, and had
Hmm.
been casually scheming to completely destroy Rome for almost 2 whole decades. In 219 BC, Hannibal sacked the Roman allied Saguntum in Spain, and Rome, defensively of course, declared war.
Mm-hmm.
Hannibal, the madman, proceeded to rather
Yeah, elephant
famously
dude.
Leroy Jenkins his way across the goddamn Alps with over 40,000 soldiers and 37 elephants. Elephants! And while elephants aren't particularly scary to us, if you're an ancient Roman who's never seen an elephant
Them
before,
demons.
that thing is a four-legged giant with 2 spears and a snake coming out of its face. Bottom line, they're monsters. The Romans
Yeah, no.
thought they were monsters. Granted, most of Hannibal's elephants died while crossing the Alps, perhaps
True.
unsurprisingly, but it doesn't take a lot of elephants to have a scary amount of
Also, like, bro, I'm gonna say it right here, right now. Wait, actually, hold on. Let me look. 25 miles per hour. Honestly, that ain't slow. That ain't slow at all. 25 miles per hour for an elephant. Them big ass motherfuckers rushing you down. No, I'd be done. I'd like to give the fuck up. I'll be damned before I see like 3 elephants chasing my ass down.
elephant on the battlefield. I genuinely can't convey how viscerally
They'll
terrifying the
damn
mere
outrun
mention
you.
of
I know.
Hannibal's
It's
name would
you're
have been to a
fucked.
Roman. And Anyway, after arriving in Italy, Hannibal demonstrated his tactical brilliance by immediately winning 2 battles in northern Italy through guerrilla
Mm-hmm.
and ambush tactics. Hannibal and his armies would proceed to stay in Italy, effectively behind enemy lines with next to no means of supply or reinforcement, for 16 years.
Excuse me, what? Bro was running guerrilla warfare for 16 years? That'd be like fucking this is well, let's use the US as an example. That's like saying that hey, one of Jack Appel's or local, give me a country. We'll see if they actually send me a country or not. Otherwise, I'm gonna just choose Spain. Cambodia. This might be hitting home then. I was gonna say that's like the U.S. just sending a good squadron of Marines. They lose a good chunk of their supplies on the way there, and then for 16 years they just stay in the country, causing havoc and terror. Fucking hell. 16 years to go without dying in enemy lines. That's a long ass time. Let's not play around. Jesus.
Carthaginians went up and down the peninsula, setting fire to farms left and right, hoping above all else for Rome to simply surrender. 2 years into the campaign, Hannibal said, "Alright, screw this, I'm gonna destroy the entire Roman army," and proceeded to make plans for his next battle, at the
Mm-hmm.
Roman supply depot at Cannae in southern Italy. At the battle, the
Ah.
Carthaginians advanced in a U shape, with 40,000 infantry forming the front line and 10,000 cavalry on the wings. The Romans, however, had
I'm just gonna point this out. There's a lot of things I love in this world. Strategy games is a good chunk of them. Why is it fucking glitching me? Come on now, don't glitch out on, bitch. Do it like a man. Don't fucking glitch out again, please. Okay, so just gonna point this out here. So obviously we have our greens here. The U shape would be cool, but I'm just going to assume that there's more likely someone who's going to either flank from one or the other two directions. This just seems like a trap. It's either that or the fact that the purple more than likely is supposed to be something that's going to pierce through, which could be effective actually when you think about it. Like I could see it, especially with these two larger columns here. I'm going to assume that these are either siege equipment or the elephants themselves. In which you could say this basically is supposed to fuck up whatever's in the middle. The U itself fucks up whatever's in the middle, and then these end up aiming in on whatever's left. Just random guesses on ideas of what I could say. But let's see what the fuck happens. Or did I get this hella wrong?
almost twice as big in armies, so they felt pretty good about their chances. The armies met, and as the fighting progressed, the center of the Carthaginian line fell back, and the Romans pushed forward, hoping to break the retreating line. Except, at that moment when they all rushed in, the Carthaginians' African infantry and famed Numidian cavalry advanced on the flanks and effectively enveloped the whole Roman
Oh
army.
shit, it's the
From
opposite of what I
there,
said.
it was a bloodbath.
Yeah, no,
Estimates
you surround
are
on all
all over the
sides. Yeah,
place,
no,
but the
you're fucked.
gist is that most of the 80,000 strong Roman army was killed outright and the rest were imprisoned. The slaughter went on until nightfall, and in one version of the story I've heard, the Carthaginians only started taking prisoners because their arms got tired from all the killing. It was the single
We didn't care to take prisoners until we got tired. Fucking hell.
greatest defeat that Rome ever suffered in its history. And Hannibal hoped that a shattered and dismayed Rome, having lost 16 legions in the entire south of Italy, would surrender at once.
No.
Rome's response was simply, "See you next year," and it spent the entire winter raising more armies to go out the following summer. For the next several years, the
Yeah, I'm starting to see the I don't think it's immediately American, but it feels like America in the way that Rome just goes in and says, we're gonna take a little bit of this culture and a little bit of this one, and we're all gonna call them all American cultures, and they don't get to escape. But at the same time, if you want to step on our motherfucking property, you're gonna have to die. So that's just the vibe that I'm getting from Rome.
The Roman
So,
army pursued the strategy of just bother him and shadowed Hannibal around the Italian countryside. He was still being annoying, but he wasn't a direct threat to the city of Rome, so good enough for now. But jumping back, can we take a second to
mm-hmm.
appreciate the sheer quintessential Roman badassery it takes to hear that you lost at least 50,000 soldiers and then turn around and tell the guy who killed them to shove it and wait for round two? Because holy crap, that takes some serious cojones.
Hey, hey. The Roman nuts are the size of bowling balls. No, not bowling balls. Cannonball size fucking nuts. The balls on this man. They'd be firing with gum gallons.
Serious and massively suicidal coleones. And
Yes.
speaking of, in 211,
I love how Blue just had the little
this and
fucking addendum of
massively
fucking balls.
suicidal coleone.
Just the fucking addendum of little just balls.
And speaking of, in 211, the young Publius Cornelius Scipio took up a generalship for the Spanish campaign, which was widely considered to be a suicide mission. To the
Mm-hmm.
surprise of basically everyone, he spent the next 5 years successfully
Damn.
de-Carthagifying Spain to great effect. Following his campaign, he hatched a brilliant plan to take the fight back to Carthage. The Senate, thinking this
Ooh, that actually might be a good idea. It's like, wait a second. You sent your best general, and he's causing a little bit of struggle here. But as long as we hold him back, and we send our man to start fucking up your land, we'll see who runs out of shit first.
was another suicide mission, told him he could do it, but they wouldn't finance his armies. So Scipio raised a couple legions in Italy and Sicily and hopped over to North Africa.
Hmm.
Now, while Hannibal is absolutely a brilliant general in that he did impossibly crazy stuff like crossing the Alps, campaigning in Italy for 16 years, and wiping out an entire Roman army,
Yeah.
Scipio's brilliance came from his quintessentially Roman ability to adopt and adapt. The
Uh
Romans,
oh.
above all else, knew a good idea when they saw one, and they almost never made the same mistake twice. Scipio studied Cannae, and he knew what he had to do to defeat Carthage. Since the Numidian cavalry was critical to the
Mm-hmm.
Carthaginian army, Scipio played into a Numidian civil war to get some of their cavalry for himself. In doing so, he had
Oh.
massively weakened Carthage on their own soil, and had nearly orchestrated their surrender when, oh snap, Hannibal's back.
Oh
And
shit! No! Wait, what? Hold up. Why the fuck am I? I want to be invested, but I also realize I'm looking stupid as hell because I'm getting invested as fuck. Because I'm like, hold up, this is just you. Like, the big boss is over there. I can sleep by and just take over all of Carthage while he's not looking. And then he just turns back around and like, fuck, he's right behind me, isn't he? Yep, yep.
on that day, history nerds from all around the world and across time busted out the popcorn because this is gonna be good. The night before the impending battle,
Yo, who's your bets on? Because I'm putting my bets on red. Although purple is my color, I'm putting my bets on red. Mostly because this video is literally called the Roman Republic, so I'm assuming that it wins.
of Zama, Hannibal and Scipio actually, supposedly, had a meeting. It's detailed in Livy's History of Rome, book 30, chapters 30 and 31. Just read it, okay? For me.
Okay.
Read it, it's incredible. First, they're simply in awe of each other. Then, Hannibal waxes philosophical about fortune, gives Scipio life advice, and asks for peace. Scipio responded, well, I was going to make peace, but then you brought an army here. I can't just leave now. Look, Hannibal, I respect you. I really do. And you're leaving me no choice here, man. I've just got to kick your ass, dude. I'm sorry. There's no other way. I have to kick your ass. And on the following day, some
That is a very good thing. Also, Scipio knew to expect elephants, so he built gaps into his line to funnel their charge through without anyone getting trampled. That is some forethought. Ooh, that is forethought. I like that. I like that. And yeah, Hannibal at this point, it's been years. They would definitely know. It's like, hey, this dude always brings fucking elephants everywhere.
asses were certainly kicked. At the Battle of Zama, Scipio's Numidian cavalry put the Carthaginian cavalry to flight, and fighting between the infantry lines was actually very close until the Roman cavalry returned from behind the Carthaginian line to ultimately win the day. It was a hard-fought and super tense battle, but with that, the Second
Yeah.
Punic War was won. Half a century and a lot of Cato the Elder ending all of his speeches
Which is why we should build another aqueduct. Furthermore, I conduct that Carthage must be destroyed.
With Carthago delenda est later, Rome returns to raze Carthage to the ground. To rub
Hmm.
more salt in the wound, the Romans also literally rubbed
Salt
salt in the
tears.
earth to make sure the Carthaginians would never rise again. Wow.
That is so fucking petty. You hate your enemy so much you have to season the ground where they stand, where they stood, more or less.
Okay, so there's regular bitter, there's Taylor Swift writes a song about you bitter, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's Rome hates you so much they wipe you off the face of the earth forever bitter. Moral
Yes,
of the story is Rome does not screw.
I like Rome style of fuck around and find out. Roman style fuck around and find out is what I want to achieve on a casual level of spite. Okay, it's just like, hey, you did this, you paid the consequences. It's just I set the price and you weren't able to pay it, so instead I'll collect your life. Carthage wasn't actually salted into oblivion. The amount of salt required to make that large of a city barren would be impossibly expensive. But the origin of the myth may owe to obscure Roman religions and military practices. The Rerum Repetio required a priest to stab a javelin into enemy land when declaring a war. But sometimes enemy land was far away, so Rome kept a small square of enemy land inside the city for just this purpose. This is fully conjecture, but it's loosely possible that Rome could have salted just that ceremonial patch of enemy land instead of salting all of Carthage. Local, if I ever meet you, I'm going to make you get me some McDonald's fries because there's only a level of salt that I need after that. I need sodium, raw, unadulterated sodium.
Around, so don't screw with Rome. With Spain and North Africa now happily Romanized, focus shifted eastward, and Rome proceeded to clean up the squabbling and stagnating Hellenistic kingdoms from the aftermath of Alexander the Short-Sighted's campaigns. The
Mm-hmm.
Macedonians had helped Carthage in the Punic Wars, and Rome considered that sufficient grounds for bespearment. And bespearment, of course, is a word that I made up for the act of getting stabbed with a spear.
Ah,
Anyway, in that conflict, the Seleucid Greeks helped.
you know what I mean. It's the sodium. Wait, it's NaSC. That's salt, right? I may be dead. I might be dead. Yeah, it's sodium chloride. Oh, so it's NaSC or SL. Fuck. Okay, I'm gonna die if I just. This is why I didn't become a chemist. Okay.
The Macedonians, so the Romans saw that too as provocation. Not wanting to go too far too fast, and also because they didn't quite have a big enough army yet, Rome stopped at Greece for the better part of a century and simply took to kneecapping the armies of the Eastern Mediterranean so they didn't pose any direct threat. This marks
Oh,
a much more aggressive Roman attitude towards conquest. It was super important that Italy be unified.
I'm just gonna say this right now. Rome at one point was peaceful, but due to the fact that they absorb and they grow with each conquest, they gain the bloodthirst of Carthage,
Through
and
kindness and
now they know
generosity
the
because that
taste,
was Italy,
and they
but all of
hunger
these
for
new
more.
places were explicitly considered provinces under Rome. Even though Rome was still a republic and didn't yet have an emperor, it absolutely possessed an empire by this point. After the conquest of
Mm-hmm.
Greece and the acquisition of the kingdom of Pergamum through a will, of all things, Rome was clearly the dominant power in the Mediterranean. Now, despite Rome's best efforts, it was about to have some serious problems, a few of which derived from the Roman patron-client system, in which a wealthy and
What?
well-connected Roman provided for his clients, who in turn supported him politically. This worked fine on a small scale, but
Okay.
things got problematic when people effectively tried to buy public support in large quantities. In the late 2nd century,
What?
the Gracchi brothers
Oh, so
attempted on
just buying
several
fucking
occasions to
voters. Great.
redistribute land to their supporters, among several other reforms.
So, give me just a moment. I don't remember if y'all remember this, but I just got something to say. Am I wrong? Is this not the man? Is this not him? Why does he just remind me of Zuckerberg? Is this Zuckerberg's true form? Has he been around for that long? The reptilian eyes were here all along. His skin isn't scales, it's stone. He's a statue come to life. Anyways, just fucking goofing around at this point. Needs a longer face. Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. And less human eyes. Well, they had to make it look good for the statue at least. They can hide things there. That's their version of Photoshop. You just keep some features off.
And when Tiberius Gracchus tried to run for re-election as tribune, he was assassinated.
Oh.
A decade later, Gaius Gracchus and his allies were also assassinated.
Oh shit.
Whoa, Rome buddy, hold up. You had no political violence for over 600 years. You got a really good thing going. Please don't screw this up.
Yeah, no, here's the lovely thing. Utopias and lovely, nice societies, after they taste blood, don't usually go back to being vegan again. They like to be carnivores and devour that motherfucker. Oh, we were really peaceful and then we got fucked with and we couldn't be peaceful anymore? Well, fuck peace. Give them war.
Up. Oh, wow, yeah, they really...
First Servile War, Second Servile War, Social War, Sulia's First War, Sulia's Second War, Sertorian War, Third Servile War, Catilian Conspiracy, Caesar's Civil War, Assassin Wars, Cilician Revolt, and Final Wars of the Republic.
Screw this one up, don't they? Jeez. Yikes, where do we start? Okay, so, first there are 3 mass slave revolts in Sicily and Italy, then there's the Social War where most of Italy revolted against Rome, after which all Italians were granted full citizenship, and let's also not forget the Catalan conspiracy to overthrow the consulship of Cicero. All of those civil wars were reconciled, but still, that's a lot of civil warring to happen in just the span of a half century.
I mean, you absorb all these different groups into you, and they didn't really want to join you. There's gonna be some unrest. Unrest. Fucking hell.
Century. But by far, the worst of the lot were the factional civil wars between the populist populares and the aristocratic optimates, otherwise known as the 2 civil wars between Marius and Sulla. Gaius Marius, a 7-time consul and general who conquered parts of North Africa and settled the Social War, headed the populares, while the optimates were led by Lucius Sulla, another successful general. The optimates were the ones who assassinated the Gracchi brothers, and when Sulla came back from a campaign in Anatolia, he marched his army into Rome, established himself as dictator, and proceeded to massacre his rival populares. Twice. He did all of that twice. That's huge! In 50 years, we went from not a single Roman being killed over politics to armies marching on Rome and carrying out prescribed hit lists of political enemies. Things were really, really bad in the 1st century. For now, though, let's recap.
Why?
Rome started as
we
one
were starting off
tiny,
with such a good
irrelevant
point.
city and grew itself very gradually through calculated means. First conquering Italy, then the islands, then Spain, and soon after Greece, North Africa, and Anatolia. What astounds me is that a typical Roman would only ever see a small part of this unfold. The Romans were patient, and they knew that doing things properly and working towards something bigger than themselves would lead to accomplishments far greater and longer lasting than the
interesting as hell because it just reminds me of like big ass countries. Insert U.S.
The Roman Republic.
We were so great, small.
Most brilliant
we were all interconnected, but now we're so big that
we
don't.
Later years, but with the right people in charge, I bet that it could continue on for centuries to come. Like this guy right here, Julius Caesar, who I'm sure will do everything in his power to preserve the Republic.
No.
We saw in the last couple videos that as Roman politics got increasingly factional and Roman territory got increasingly massive, things started getting increasingly civil war-y. As in, they'd barely be able to go a decade between 135 and 30 BC without collapsing into some variety of a civil war. It's honestly a minor miracle that Rome didn't permanently tear itself in half before we even got to Caesar. So as we push forward through history,
honestly, I want to see North Rome and South
I want to consider
Rome.
the question of whether the Roman Republic, not Rome as a whole, but specifically the Republican system of government, was doomed to fail, or whether it had any chance of survival. Because our answer to that question really matters when we look at people like Caesar and Augustus.
I think that I think basically every government has this issue. You get too damn big and you have to worry about all these different people, it's the problem. Smaller governments make more sense.
And ask ourselves what they did and whether or not they went too far. But since I'm impatient, I'm going to give you my answer right now. To me, the Republic had almost no chance of surviving on its own. Zero. You saw what happened in the first century. You know what kind of mess Rome was in. I love the Roman Republic. It's one of my favorite systems of government ever, but that poor thing was so screwed. So with our sickly looking republic on its last legs, let's meet the guy who took it out back and killed it dead. Julius Caesar. Now let's do some history. To establish what kind of guy Caesar really is, I'll spin you a yarn about some Cilician pirates. When Caesar was in his early 20s, he managed to get himself captured by a band of pirates who wanted to ransom him off for 20 talents of silver. There's no agreed upon conversion between talents and US dollars, but for our purposes, let's just say that 1 talent is about $1 million. So when Caesar heard this sum, he straight up laughed at them and demanded that they ask for a much more respectable 50 talents instead. The pirates, charmed by Caesar's overwhelming diva-ness and razor-sharp cheekbones, I might add, were all too happy to keep him around for the sheer entertainment factor. He played games with them, told stories, and even wrote poems and speeches for them. Sometimes they'd joke about his speeches being bad, and Caesar would respond.
I'm just gonna say this now. Caesar's a damn bard. He's just a fucking bard. He's a bard fighter that happens to be like just a pain in the ass. Didn't Caesar also like fuck Cleopatra? I forget this. Or was that a different person? Who fucked Cleopatra?
By saying that when he got free, he'd come back and crucify every last one of them, which the pirates apparently thought was hilarious. Eventually, the pirates did get their 50 talents, so they let Caesar go. And then about 5 seconds later, Caesar came back with a bunch of ships and arrested all of them, casually taking his 50 talents back. He brought the pirates to the provincial governor, but since he didn't really seem to care all that much, Caesar took matters into his own hands and took the high road by keeping his promise, and crucified all of them. Fun! Moral of the story is Caesar cares a lot about his image, he's amazingly charismatic, he's not afraid to take matters into his own hands if he needs to, and he does not screw around. On to more historically significant matters, our boy Gaius Julius Caesar was a well-to-do nobleman from a prestigious family that traced its ancestry back to the epic hero Aeneas and his mother Venus. However, Caesar had a chip on his shoulder because his dad was never consul. You see, in Roman culture, the concept of nobilitas was rooted in the idea that you can inherit excellence, but you have to confirm it by doing excellent things in the present. So unlike in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution and the early modern period, you couldn't just coast by on familial prestige, you actually had to,
actually
do
back
something
it up
for it in ancient Rome. Caesar's dad not being consul was a big deal, so his primary goal in life was to confirm his nobilitas by just being consul. To do it, he struck a deal with 2 other prominent Romans, Crassus, the richest man in Rome, and Pompey, Rome's most accomplished general, and they created an informal alliance. In other words, they made the first triumvirate. They were all good friends, Pompey married Caesar's daughter, Crassus bribed Caesar's way to the consulship in 59 BC, Caesar passed all the laws that Pompey and Crassus wanted, it was a good time. In the process of ramming through debt forgiveness and land redistribution legislation, Caesar definitely broke several procedural norms and did things that were straight up illegal, but since he was consul, he had imperium, the gold Mario star of Roman politics, which meant that he couldn't be prosecuted for his actions while he was in office, regularly overriding the veto of your co-consul on the principle of because I said so, and filling the city with legionaries to dissuade your political opponents may be definite no-nos in the eyes of the Roman elite, but no one could really do anything about it. Anyway, for Caesar here in power,
invincible.
he was
The
safe,
fuck you gonna
but
do?
once that consulship and his imperium expired, Caesar had a big target on his back, so he needed to find a way to keep his imperium until he was allowed to run for consul again 10 years later. Conveniently, generals also have imperium, so Caesar's next move was to secure himself a governorship of a province and the command of a few legions so he could go around campaigning with all the imperium in the world until he could stand for consul again. Some senators, fearing that Caesar would do literally exactly that, tried to swap his guarantee for governor of a province for essentially governor of the Italian woods, but Pompey and Crassus, again, had enough power to overturn that. Coins and stabby things tend to get you a lot in life. But here we see just how fragile the Republic really was at this point. Anyone with enough connections and resources could effectively cripple the normal flow of government and steer it in favorable directions for their own benefit. But anyway, Caesar got himself
Don't
4
you just
legions
love
and a
it
cushy
when fucking
governorship in
rich
southern
people have
Gaul,
the
along with
ability
a
to just
metric
ruin
buttload
things?
of military imperium to keep him safe, and set about campaigning in Gaul for the next 10 years. It's astounding.
I know, I stopped making a lot of jokes. I've been cutting my fucking toenails. I'm kind of just waiting for him to like take a break to breathe, or till we get more to Caesar's getting stabbed in the back 1,000 times, in which I will then laugh and joke.
How much we know in detail about these campaigns, and it's because Caesar himself wrote extensive commentaries on them. This was critical, as he could justify his continued campaign in Gaul year after year by showing how cool he was and how great of a job he was doing, while also building up support among the Roman people by also showing how cool he was and how great of a job he was doing. Plus, we got a history out of it, so win-win-win. Alright, so in enough detail that I can still sleep at night, but also in short enough form that this video won't be an hour long, Caesar's campaign went roughly as follows. In 58 BC, Caesar attacked the Helvetii tribe on the pretense that they were attacking an ally of Rome, because remember, Rome would never be so crass as to attack unprovoked. At the end of each year's campaigning season, Caesar left his armies in Gaul and spent the winters in northern Italy. The next year, Caesar went north, won a battle, and got ambushed one time. In 56, Caesar claimed that the Veneti tribe had, quote, revolted from Rome even though they were in goddamn Finisterre, so, he conquered it. Safe to say at this point that Caesar functionally considered all of Gaul as already his. Rome's. The next year, Caesar went really hard on the Gaul is Roman thing. He considered Britain and Germany as threats to Gaul and therefore as threats to Rome. So in the same year, he bridged the Rhine and attacked some Germans, and he sailed across the English Channel. The invasion of Britain was honestly a total bust, so the next year he went back with a huge fleet because the man can't leave well enough alone, and pushed as far north as the Thames. After his floundering, humiliating scramble on the British beaches the year before, Caesar had to prove that Rome was no pushover. To his enemies, to himself, and to his Romans back home. Also he lost an entire legion to an ambush in the dead of winter. So,
Bad general, bro.
in 53, he went back to Germany and afterwards left half of his bridge still standing in a sort of don't you make me come back there power play. The following year was probably the biggest year of the campaign because King Vercingetorix had unified the remaining Gallic tribes against Rome. After some battling back and forth, Vercingetorix camped out on the fortified hill city of Alesia. Now, Caesar needed to surround and wall off the city to starve it out, but there was also the distinct likelihood that he himself got attacked while investing the city. So Caesar needed to fortify both directions. His army built a 10-mile long wall on the inside and a 14-mile long wall on the outside.
What the
24
fuck?
miles of wall that Caesar threw down because he was determined to take this city. But oh snap, next thing you know, a ton of angry Gauls come down to attack Caesar. So Caesar rolls a natural 20 on his deception check, sends out a cavalry detachment to attack them, but the Gauls think it's the first of an entire Roman reinforcement force, so they panic and book it right the hell out of there, allowing Caesar to take the city, and just like
He's just
that,
a fucking
all
bard
of Gaul
fighter.
basically
He's
belongs
literally
to
just
Caesar.
a bard fighter.
Boom. That's how you do a campaign. The next 2 years were spent cleaning up the last pockets of resistance because, remember, Caesar still had a few years before he's allowed to buy his way to the consulship again. To complicate things, Crassus died while on a campaign in Parthia, and Pompey, feeling his oats, got the Senate to rescind Caesar's governorship of Gaul. So even the triumvirate, which was supposed to be immune to the vices of factionalism, fell victim to the vices of factionalism. That's not a good sign. So Caesar got Pompey's note, and astutely realizing that going back to Rome on his own was nearly a death sentence, Caesar, feeling his oats, said screw it, or more accurately said alia iacta est, and brought the 13th Legion over the Rubicon River and into Italy. Pompey and most of the Senate proceeded to nope right the hell out of town and go to Greece. Caesar, rousing the support of the people, was proclaimed temporary dictator, Latin for speaker, with the goal of restoring peace, even though he was technically the one who started the civil war, but details. And he proceeded to absolutely demolish Pompey's army in Greece at the Battle of Pharsalus against all odds. And then he chased poor old Pompey to the end of the earth, which in this case was Egypt. Pompey sought refuge with the boy King Ptolemy, who owed him a favor, and was likely very displeased to find himself beheaded instead. Terrible way to start a vacation. Anyway, Caesar was absolutely horrified to see Pompey's head, because first of all he was a fellow Roman citizen, but also Caesar was planning on pardoning him afterwards, not killing him. See, this is a lesson in how healthy communication—
Wait, what? Sorry, I was listening to this and going, Caesar's going to murder this man. He's going to take him on the pike and throw him down, stab him through the brain and run him in the ground. Like, I thought he was just gonna murderize him, but oh, he's legitimately like, nah, you are my homie. Like, you gonna be free. The fuck?
Medication saves lives. But yeah, Caesar was super big on clemency. That was pretty much his thing, except for, the pirates he crucified. But anyway, in addition to pardoning some people, tribes, and even whole towns during the Gallic campaign, Caesar pardoned pretty much Pompey's entire army and all of his supporters who fled to Greece with him. For me personally, that's one of the most important aspects of Caesar's character. And he was certainly a controversial character, but it's important that we weigh the good with the bad. He broke a ton of laws and sold his soul just to become consul, but he made moderate reforms that benefited the people. He killed a lot of Gauls and Romans in the civil wars following his consulship, but he granted clemency wherever he could. And he basically fashioned himself.
Or in other words, lay down your weapons and you may be let in, but if you raise them, you shall die. You know what? I fuck with Caesar. He's the most Roman of all Romans. Carry a big stick, hit the bitch. And if they decide to swing, hit them harder. If they decide to stand on their feet, knock them down. If they give up and surrender, let them be live. No, not let them be live. Let them be free.
Himself a king after he was appointed dictator for life, but he was beloved by his people and he used his power to stabilize Rome. All in all, he did do a lot of serious
evil dictator,
and
but
lasting
he
good
did
for
good
Rome's
with his
people, but
dictatorship.
that good was done through politically devious means for suspiciously power-hungry motivations. He's a controversial character for really good reason, and I'm doing my best to give you both sides of this right now so you can get a feel for some of the questions people like Brutus asked themselves when they were making plans to assassinate him. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Ahead of myself?
Ahead of myself. Oof. Awkward. While Caesar was in Egypt deciding what to do with poor old Pompey's head, he was making moves both with and on the Queen Cleopatra, supporting her in her civil war against her brother. The arrangement proved beneficial for both of them, as Cleopatra could count on Caesar's Rome supporting rather than annexing Egypt, and Caesar could count on Cleopatra's Egypt as a continuous source of food, which helped supply Caesar's generous public food programs. And for bonus points, by all accounts, Cleopatra was just plain interesting to talk to, so win-win. Following Caesar's return to Rome, his position as dictator was extended to 10 years. During his time as dictator, Caesar managed to instate even more reforms that promoted public welfare, government efficiency, and general stability. For one, he limited the political and military power of provincial governors, mostly to stop other people from doing to him what he did to Pompey in the Senate. He also reformed the monstrosity that was the old Roman.
So he's someone who abused the system, made it better, and then made the system so people couldn't abuse it the same way he did. Interesting. Very fucking interesting.
Roman calendar so well that we still use a version of it today. He also conducted a census, carried out several building projects, unified the Roman provinces more closely with Italy, and was just all around a really solid leader. Did he pull a lot of super mega illegal stunts to get himself to this point?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But did he make substantially beneficial reforms that the people loved? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the part that makes me sad and angry. In March of 44 BC, Caesar was named dictator for life, and this made a lot of senators really antsy because at this point he was basically king, and Rome still very specifically didn't like kings.
Yeah, they didn't.
On the Ides of March, Brutus, Cassius, and about 60 other senators surrounded and killed Caesar in the theater of Pompey. Ironic. Caesar's last moments are rather disputed, but my take on it is that when he saw Brutus, his friend, whom he had pardoned after Pharsalus was a part of the conspiracy, he accepted his fate and fell to the ground, covering his face with his toga. I don't think Caesar even was eloquent enough to have fancy last words when there were 23 knives simultaneously stabbing him. No one is. The assassins may have fancied themselves liberators and restorers of the Republic, but they didn't count on the fact that the Romans really liked Caesar because, I don't know, he was a generous and effective leader. While I may disapprove of Caesar's actions in his early career,
he was a dictator, but a good one.
Assassins. He granted them clemency, and they killed him. Dante puts Brutus and Cassius in the lowermost pit of hell for betraying their protector, and I'm with Dante on this one.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Caesar. Stabbed 23 times and left bleeding out on the floor of the Curia. Brutus and Cassius were able to read the mood in the room well enough to tell that they weren't wanted, so they and a bunch of senators hightailed it to Greece to build up an army. It doesn't end too well for the assassins, but I'm already into overtime, so let's wrap this up. In my mind, Caesar killed the Republic long before he was even dictator. He proved how breakable the system was. Let's count it. He bribed his way into office, illegally rammed legislation through the Senate, intimidated his political enemies with threats of force, escaped any and all consequences for his actions on a technicality, commandeered Roman resources for his own prestige and enrichment, marched an entire legion into Rome, and declared war on a fellow Roman for his own political gain. The entirety of Caesar's main political career was either distinctly unrepublican in character or explicitly illegal. And remember that only after all of that did the Senate name Caesar as dictator for the first time. By the time Caesar was named dictator for life and functionally had become a king, he had long since proved that the Republic was fundamentally broken. For most of the Republic's history, its success came from fantastic Roman teamwork. But here, its downfall came primarily from the selfishness of powerful Romans. People realized how incredibly fragile and gameable the institutions of the Republic were when you stretched them across the entire Mediterranean, so basically one of two things could have happened to Rome. Either civil wars continued on and eventually ripped Rome to bits, or something in Rome's government changed to make it less susceptible to all those civil wars in the first place. Basically, it was monarchy or bust at this point, because nothing else could stop the chaos. While Augustus becoming emperor down the line was far from a guarantee, Rome's transition from a republic to a monarchy was inevitable if it was to survive. It's a little paradoxical, but in a way, Caesar saved Rome by destroying the then unstable and unworkable republic.
I gave you the freedom of choice by removing the choices that you had. I saved your democracy with my monarchy. Yeah, interesting as fuck. There you go, just the last toenail you clipped. Okay, now I have free hand.
Abused the hell out of its institutions, but in
By the way,
doing
the link
so
will be
he
in the
showed
description
how
so you can go
effective a
all
strong
down
and
there and
stable
subscribe
central
and like
government
and
could be,
support the
and this
motherfuckers.
was the basis of Rome's accomplishments for the centuries to follow. Today, Caesar kills the Republic. Next time, Augustus starts an empire. Thank you so much for watching. This idea of combining pre-existing videos and remastering them into a shiny definitive edition is a bit of an experiment, but if
I actually like the definitive editions. I thought this would take longer and like feel draining, but this was actually pretty refreshing, and I kept my energy level high. Though I did drain out by the end. That's when I stopped talking so much. And yeah, everybody, get the fuck out of here. Support the original video, and I'm going to have the links down in the description.